Okay, here we go. All right. We're on Daf Hey.
Oh, I forgot it was late. Oh, you was good. Okay.
Yeah, we're on Daf Hey on the base. Yeah. 8 lines in the top. Yeah. We zeggen is met Yitzchok Tov and Nissen Eliezer. Okay, we're starting the Yitzchok Tov Rottenstein Shiur on Daf Hey on the base, and we're up to 8 lines in the top. We learned in the last Shiur, last week, that Rebbe did a number of things. And the Gemorah said that one of the things Rebbe did was that he planted an atiyah on Purim. Another thing he did was he took a public bath in the Krona Shel Tzipori, meaning everybody knew that he was doing that on Shiva Asar B'Tammuz, and that he wanted to uproot Tisha B'Av. And we discussed last week about what he wanted to do was uproot Tisha B'Av according to one day in the Tosfos was that he wanted to make it like every other
Right.
of the fast days, right? Another interpretation was that he wanted to make it on the 10th of Av instead of the 9th of Av, because Chas v'Shalom, he wasn't planning on uprooting Tisha B'Av Lagamri. Okay, and that's where we ended off. Ask the Gemara now. The Rebbe, heichi natan atiyah b'Purim. How is it possible that Rebbe went and planted something on Purim? You cannot. Why not? Because Tani Rav Yosef came along and he taught. It says in the pasuk about the holiday of Purim, Yom Tov of Purim. It says in the pasuk in Megilah, it says it's going to be a day of simcha umishte b'yom tov. Right, so each one of these things is designating a particular form of what Purim is supposed to be about. So when it said simcha, it meant simcha is melamed she asurim behesped. The word simcha came to teach that Purim is forbidden to make any hespedim. Mishte, when it said that Purim is supposed to be a day of drinking, melamed she'asur b'tainis, that on Purim it's forbidden to fast. Okay, and I'm sorry, a simcha melamed she'asur b'hesped, mishte melamed she'asur b'tainis. The Yom Tov, when it said that it's going to be not only simcha but mishte and also Yom Tov, melamed she'asur b'asiyas melacha. This teaches us that Purim is forbidden to do melacha. So if Purim is also forbidden to do melacha, how could Rebbe possibly have planted on Purim when planting is a melacha? That's the kasha. Ella, the Gemara answers, I'll tell you. What happened here was the following. Rebbe bar arbisa havi. Rebbe was the kind of person who was from a city in which they had to make Purim on the 14th. He was Bar Arvisa. He was a son of a 14th day of Adar, which is when Purim normally is. V'chinata, and when he made the planting, b'chamisa natar. He on his day of Purim, but on the day of Purim, which was Shushan Purim, the next day. Okay, that's what he says. Ask. Yeah, we're now about 12 lines down. Now
12 lines from the top there.
About 12 lines down. Ask the Gemara, Eini, is this really so that Rebbe was, the second word on the line, the third word on the line is Eini. Eini, is this really so? V'harebi b'Tveria havi. Rebbe actually lived in this, for a time. We know that he went to Kiryat Yearim and other places, but at that time, and Tosfos is going to tell us when that time was, the Rebbe b'Tveria have. Rebbe was someone who lived in Tveria. The Tveria mukefes choma mimos Yoshua ben Nun have. And the city of Tveria was a city which had a wall around it from the days of Yoshua ben Nun. At least that's the Hava Amina here in this statement, that Tveria was a walled city from the days of Yoshua ben Nun. So since Tveria was a walled city from the days of Yoshua ben Nun, how could he possibly have planted on the 15th, telling me that he's from the 14th when he was in Tveria, and Tveria was the 15th?
Yeah.
Ella, we got to change it around. And here's number one. Ella, Rebbe bar Charmisa. You're right. Rebbe really was a 15th day of observance of Purim, meaning he observed Purim on the 15th because he lived in Tveria, and Tveria was a walled city, and consequently he had to hold Purim on the 15th. V'chinota, and when he did the planting, Barbi Sahava, it was on the 14th. Okay, so in other words, he wasn't planting on the same day. Asks the Gemorah, is it so simple that and clear? Pashut here, Pshita here doesn't mean simple. It means, is it so clear? It's so pashut to everybody that Tveria is a walled city from the days of Yehoshua ben Nun. Don't tell me that Tveria is obviously, and everybody knows that it's a walled city from the days of Yehoshua ben Nun. V'hachizkiya, the Tana Chizkiya, Kori b'Tveria ba'arvisa uvachamisa.
Oh.
He read the Megilah
On the 14th.
on the 14th and on the 15th in Tveria because Mesafkele, he had a sofek. Mukefes choma mimos Yoshua ben Nun. If it's a walled city from the days of Yoshua ben Nun, Elo.
Both days too.
So why did he do both days?
What?
The other the suitors and the shop.
Oh.
The both days.
Whatever. We're talking. Whatever it is. Whatever it is. He held Purim on both days. He read the Megilah both days. Okay. He read the Megilah both days. So in other words, it was clear that, it's not so clear that Tveria was a walled city. Because if it was clear, he wouldn't be reading it on the 14th.
Right.
And the 15th, he would have been reading just on the 15th.
But there was a suffix, right?
Right? So it's a suffix.
Yeah.
So since it's a suffix, right? Why? How could Rebbe? So not a question is if it's a suffix, right? So that means you have to read the Megilah both on the 14th and 15th,
Right.
and that means all the laws of the Yom Tov of Purim, when it says Simcha Mitzvah Yom Tov, have to apply not only on the 14th but also on the 15th. How could Rebbe possibly have planted on any one of those days, no matter what you held about Tveria?
Right.
It's both days of Purim, and therefore it's also the Melacha. What? So what do you want to do? Make it in what way? What do you mean? What do we mean when we say? What do we do when we say Safek D'Rabbanan L'Kula? What do we do? What do we do when we say Safek D'Rabbanan L'Kula? Excuse me.
Amen.
So okay, so tell me the Kula. Safek D'Rabbanan L'Kula.
It's not. I don't know. It's like second day Yom Tov. I don't know.
Is there? Can you think of any other example? Can you think of any other example in Shas? Maybe you remember. Maybe you don't. I don't know. Think of another example in Shas where there's a question. Is it these or is it these? And we have a Safek D'Rabbanan, and therefore, what do? We do both. Where does that come up? Where we have a Safek.
The answer.
What? Where in Yom Tov?
Second day Yom Tov.
Yeah, no, but there are certain kulas on the second day Yom Tov that don't exist on the first day. Yeah, okay, good. So
No,
that's only Chutz La'aretz.
Chutz, you know what day it is.
It's only Chutz La'aretz.
No,
Only Chutz La'aretz. Yeah, it has to do with Pesach. Yeah, Arba Kosos. The Gemara in Arvei Psachim has a discussion, right? When do you have to drink? When do you have to? The Arba Kosos. Oh, by the way, Arba Kosos, the Raisa, the Rabbana. Huh? The Rabbana. Arba Kosos, the Rabbana. And the question is, so on which Kosos are you chayiv to drink?
Oh, the first one's the Raisa.
Kiddush is only on Shabbos, the Raisa.
Oh,
Okay, good news.
Shabbos.
You? Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. When do you have to lean on the Arba Kosos? On which two are you chayiv? Which two is it not so clear? So the Ran over there in Arvei Psachim, he brings it down here also in the Gemara here also. The Ran says they have a suffix. Is it that you have to lean on the first two kosos, or is it on the last two kosos? right?
Well, that's exactly
How could you lead on the first toast if you're making kiddush? No?
Yeah, after you make it, you drink it.
Oh, you drink it.
Everybody drinks when you leave,
Yeah.
right? Right? That's the Gemara. The Gemara Pesachim brings up and says, it's a suffix. Do you have to lean on the first two or on the last two? So what are we paskin? Because you had to lean on both on the first two or the last one. It's a suffix the Rabbanon. So what do? We lean on all four.
So what's up with your mark?
So what?
Okay, you got to
So the Ran asks,
Yeah.
if it's suffix the Rabbanon, the Kula. So what's the possibility? Don't lean on any of them. Right? Oh, you can't do that. Because you have a suffix the Rabbanon.
Do the first one.
You have a suffix the Rabbanon. Okay. So you can have a suffix the Rabbanon. You can say I have a suffix. I don't know which ones to do it on. Do it on both. But if you wouldn't do it on any of them, you're getting rid of the mitzvah altogether. A suffix the Rabbanon can't get rid of the mitzvah. I said, how now you have the same thing over here? We have a suffix the Rabbanon over here. You read on the 14th or on the 15th. So what's the suffix the Rabbanon L'Kula? Don't read it all. You can't do that. You're getting rid of the mitzvah. You can't do that.
That's how you go.
So it's both days.
One more question. We look at before we learn that the mitzvah is the day they cry. Right?
The day that we celebrate Purim,
When is the mitzvah?
on the day they stop fighting.
They stop crying.
Fighting.
Right.
The YIBE cry.
They cried on the 13th and then they rested on the 14th.
Okay. So what is the shower when that in the Megilah?
You have to read the Megilah on the day that the nace happened, which is the 14th.
Okay, so why is the question in the closed city open?
Because in Shushan, in addition to fighting on the 14th, they fought also on the 15th. So I'm sorry,
No.
in Shushan, instead of only fighting on the 13th, they fought also on the 14th, and they rested on the 15th. Since they rested on the 15th, by then, that was their Purim. Their Purim was the 15th. So therefore, the walled cities observed Purim on the 15th, while the unwalled cities observed Purim on the 14th. So now, if you have a city, that's a question. Was it a walled city from the time of Yehoshua ben Nun or not? Which we already discussed. If you remember at the beginning of Mesechta. What are you bringing up Yehoshua ben Nun here? Purim took place 1,000 years later. What's going on over here, right? So we explained because of Kedushas Eretz Yisrael, right? Because of Eretz Yisrael, we want to show the chashivas of Eretz Yisrael. So we say from the time of Yehoshua ben Nun. So good news. So what do you have to do now? You have to read it on both the 14th and on the 15th. All right. So now we had a question over here, and we had a question. It's very a walled city, and we said that you have to read it on the 14th and on the 15th. So good. So here we say, what was the kasha here? We said Chizkiah kari b'tvari b'avisu achavisa misafkale because he had a safek imuk efes chamim was Yehoshua ben Nuni ilav. So since he had a safek, they were on both days. How could Rebbe possibly have planted either day?
Right.
And he couldn't plant on the 14th because that's a regular Purim. Couldn't plant on the 15th because the safek whether or not that's Purim. Answer the Gemara. I'll tell you what the answer is. Lechizkiah misafkale. Right? Chizkiah had a suffix whether or not area was a walled city or not. That was Chizkiah's problem. But Rebbe Pshitale, okay, Rebbe had a pashut understanding that he was clear that area was a walled city, and entered. It was not on his day of Purim, but because it was not a yont of the 14th. He planted then. Yes, the Gemara, the chip shitale mishari. Okay, you're going to tell me it's pashut to him that to him it's clear that the 15th was Purim in a walled city, or at least Tveria was clearly a walled city, and therefore the 14th was definitely not Purim, right? So
everyone pays the 13th, right?
everyone fasts on the 13th.
Right.
Yeah. Now the question is Purim the 14th or 15th? So now, to Chizkiah, it was a question. Was
How do you know it was a walled city, right?
Was it, whether it was a walled city or not? So therefore they held 14 to 15. Chizkiah had that problem. He wasn't sure. Rebbe was 100% sure that's a walled city, and therefore only on the 15th, and therefore he planted on the 14th. So the question is, now, so wait a minute. So Chizkiah had a problem whether it was a walled city or not. Was he the only human being over there in Tveria that had that question of whether or not it was a walled city? Was he the only one? Just Chizkiah? It's not a lot of people have such a suffix, right? So the Gemara says, even if it's pashut to Rebbe that it was a walled city, Mishari, what gives that right? That gives the right to Rebbe to go and plant on the 14th when it was only pashut to him that the city area was a walled city, but it wasn't pashut to everybody else. And the Oksiv, the Megillah's Tainus, it's written in Mesechta Tainus, it says the following: Es Yom Arba Osar, the Es Yom Chamisha Osar, the day of the 14th and the day of the 15th, Yomei Puraya Inun, these are the days of Purim, the Lolam Mispaid Bahon, can't make any Hespedim on any of those 2 days. The Omar Rava, and Rava came along and he said that when the Gemara made that statement that Yomei Puraya Inan the Lola Mispe Bahon, that's superfluous. I don't have to be told that. Lo Nitzvicha, I don't need you to tell me that, because that is something that's mentioned in the Megilah. And if that's the case, why is he mentioning it? I'll tell you what he's trying to say when Megillah's Tainus that the 14th and the 15th were Purim. It's teaching us Elolesar es shel zeh bo zeh, the es shel zeh bo zeh. Oh, the reason the Gemara goes and mentions that 14th and 15th are both considered Purim, and you can't do a Hesped or Tainus. I know you can't do Hesped and Tainus on Purim, so because it's mentioned in the Megilah. So why do you have to come along and tell me that the 14th and 15th you can't make Hespedim? It's only to teach me that when you are a 15th city, you can't Hespedim on the 14th. And when you are a 14th city, you can't make a Hespedim on the 15th. And the same thing goes for planting and everything else. It's all the same. Even though you're not a 14th guy, you still can plant on the 14th. You can't do anything the same way, whatever it is. Oh, that's the assumption of the kasha. The assumption of the kasha that Hespedim is usher on both. And not only is Hespedim usher on both, but also all the other things are usher on both. But the Gemara answers that's not good. The Havamina is rejected. Hani mili behesped Tainus, yeah. Oh, that which the Megillah's Tainus mentioned, that lesor es shel zeh bozeh, es shel zeh bozeh, only refers to Hesped and Tainus. Aval Melacha, but forbidden to do Melacha is only Yom Echad V'Sulo. 1 day only, and not more. Therefore, Rebbe, we'll go back to our answer. Why was Rebbe allowed to plant? Because he was planting on the day that was not his Purim. Whatever that was. We're assuming he lived in Tveria. According to Rebbe, it was clear Tveria was a walled city, and he was therefore allowed to plant on the 14th. Is this really so? We're not finished yet. We're still in the same sugi, right? Is this so? Said the Gemara, Eini, is this really so? V'harav, talking about now the Amora Rav, Chazia lahu gavle. He saw a certain man, the Hava Koshadi Kisna Bepuraya. He was planting, sowing, Shadi, he threw seeds of flax on Purim into the ground. He was sowing. That's S-O. Yeah. He was sowing seeds into the ground on Purim. And when Rav saw this, the latye, he cursed them out, and the lot samach kisnaya, he cursed. You think you're going to get something out of it? Yeah, you get anything out of it. That's like, you know, we have the halacha many times. It says if somebody does malacha on a time that they're not supposed to do, even though it's not a Isser de Oraisa, but if everybody has such a minhag and you went and did malacha, you're not going to have lo ra sim and bracha. You're never going to see him. Where do we find this? Where do we find this? Okay, Erev Pesach in the afternoon, right? Very good. Purim also. Tisha B'Av, yeah, lo ra sim and bracha, unless it's necessary for one of the reasons that it allowed. All right. So you see that Rav saw a man planting kisna on Purim, and he cursed him out, and it didn't grow. So don't tell me it's just Tainus and Hesped. You see, Malacha also was not permitted. Answer the Gemara. Now, there's a reason why Rav cursed him out. Hasam bar Yomehava. Rav cursed this guy out, and it didn't grow, because that guy was planting on the day that was his day of Purim. It was his real Purim, and that's why it didn't happen. Okay, we're going to finish this particular sugya, then we'll try to come back and discuss some interesting things about this. Cheskia was a question of whether it was. Cheskia was a question whether Tveria was a walled city or not.
And before the one that he knew.
How could Rebbe argue with Cheskia? He knew. There was no suffix by him. There was no suffix.
The early generation knew more than later.
Lav dafka. No, we don't say that. If the next generation is greater than them in Chachma and Minyan, you don't have to. No, not necessary. Doesn't always work that way. He knew better. He knew more about the town of Tveria. We'll see in Rashi an interesting discussion about this, right? But he knew. Cheskia. He said Cheskia had a suffix about this. I don't have a suffix. Okay. We'll see in Rashi an interesting point. We'll discuss it. Okay. Gemara tells us, Rabba Berei de Rava Amar. He has another answer, a second answer, how Rebbe was allowed to plant, right? So he says, Rabba Berei de Rava Amar. Rabba, the son of Rava, said, Afilu Tema. Even if you want to say Biyomei Hava, that it was the day of Purim that thing, nevertheless, Hesped v'Tainus kiblu alayhu. When it came to Hesped and Tainus, everybody accepted that upon themselves, that on either day you can't make Hesped and you can't do Tainus. Melacha, when it came to Melacha, lo kiblu alayhu. They never accepted upon themselves that they can't do Melacha. Why is that? Why did they accept that on Purim they're not going to do Hesped, they're not going to do Tainus, but Malacha they didn't accept upon themselves that we're not going to do? Why did they do that? Well, there's a tremendous difference. There's a tremendous difference. Why did they choose? Why did they just choose Malacha that they would never makabel on themselves? Okay, we can discuss it without going to the Rashi right now. We'll come to the Rashi later. But there's a logic to it. There's logic to it. What was Haman's taina about the Jews? What was his big taina? He came to Achashverosh with a taina. A lot of goyim come about the Jews. This taina, they come with this taina. What?
The same shayna.
The same shayna. In what way? In what way? Well, what was his taina? Medrash says.
Right, Shabbos.
Shabbos Hayom. You know, Sukkot Hayom, Pesach Hayom, Shavuos Hayom. What? And what are we forbidden to do? What? Yeah. And what's the taina? What's the timing?
For themselves, they will do malacha if somebody needs it.
And the timing was every day's a yom tov by them.
No?
They don't do work. The Jews are lazy people. They're lazy. They don't
Right.
They don't do work. Jews don't do work. You know, every day, Shabbos Hayom, Pesach Hayom, whatever. Shavuos Hayom, right?
And you have a holiday. Then you have a holiday.
So when it came on Purim and made Purim into a Yom Tov, right? They were not makabel that we're not going to do malacha. The stick it in the eyes of the goyim. Malacha lo kiblu alayya. We're not.
So they did malacha?
So they did malacha. Yeah. You think we're not going to do? You think that our problem is that we don't do malacha? We do. When you're hung, we're doing malacha. You understand? That's according to some of the version, right? But when you're hung, we're going to do malacha. Yeah? You're tiny every day to have another day. And now is that yes, no am echad mefuzar before bein ha'amim v'doseihem shonos mikolom v'doseihem melchei namosim. Right? Every day is a yom tov. So therefore, we're not going to do that. Malacha, we're going to do, when you're hung, we're still going to have a good time doing malacha. Okay. That's one pshat. But the Gemara now is going to give another pshat. The Gemara says, when it says, Hesped the Tainus, Kiblu Alayhu, Malacha lo Kiblu Alayhu, the main Korah ksiv, because if you look in the Megilah, at the beginning, when the Megilah itself had a discussion about what kind of day Purim was, it says Simcha Umishte v'Yom Tov. That's the first time the Yom Tov of Purim is mentioned in the Megilah, in the last few prokim. But the Libsov, in the final prokim, Ksiv La'asosto Samimei Mishte v'Simcha, they made Purim into days of drinking, feasting, and Simcha, ve'ilu Yom Tov lo ksiv. Okay, but Yom Tov they didn't write, and therefore there was no Isser of Malacha. Yes, the Gemara. Wait a minute. Ve'elarav my time malatya lahu gavra. Whoa. So if there's no Isser Malacha, why Rav cursed this guy out that the flax shouldn't grow? Yeah. Answer the Gemara. I'll tell you why. If you have a rule, wrote down Gemara Pesachim, especially when it comes to Malacha on Erev Pesach in the afternoon, Dvarim Amutarim, something that's permitted, Va'acherim Nohagu B'hen Isur Ava, and it's something that many others, not just a few others, but many others have an Isur on it, right? You're not supposed to break that Isur. If there's something that's an accepted across the board among Klal Yisrael Isser, and it's not really Osir, but the minute of everybody is that it's Osir, you're not allowed to do the opposite in front of their face. Like on Erev Pesach, right? When we kabbalah everybody not to do Melacha or Purim or Tisha B'Av, Davka not to do Melacha. So Acherim Nohagu B'hen Isur, you don't go and do it. This is a very nebulous type of thing, because not everything falls under this category. Not everything. If somebody, let's say somebody comes along and says, "My minig is not like that," I don't have that minig, and therefore he does. Let's say he has a minig, he doesn't eat pizza. No, my minig is you can't eat the pizza. It's my minig, you can't trust food. You never know cheese, what kind of cheese, what they did. My minig is you can't eat the pizza because you have a minig. I can't eat the pizza. I can't make it mutter. So Tosfos points out, we'll see the Tosfos inside. Tosfos points out that it's got to be something that's not, made up. It's got to have some teeth to it. It can't just be something that, somebody came along and said, no, that's not my minute. It doesn't work that way. It's got to be something that's written or at least copied by many, many large segments of Klal Yisrael. I'll just tell you one story about this particular thing. So there was a fellow in the yeshiva. So he got engaged to a girl who was the sister of Rav Moshe's granddaughter's husband. It was Rav Moshe had a granddaughter who married one of our Chaverim, and this Chaver had a sister who got engaged to another one of our Chaverim. Okay, this other Chaver was on the east side for Yom Tov. It was Pesach time, and this particular fellow, Rav Moshe, saw him in the yeshiva. Said, "Oh, it's so good that you're here for Pesach. Maybe you'll come and join us for lunch." Yeah, he invited him. He invited him to his house. He said, "Rebbe, I would come, but I have a minhag. I don't eat gebracht." And Rav Moshe ate gebracht. Yeah. So he said, he says, so Rav Moshe said, "Okay, so we'll be matan neder, you know." He said, "Okay, we'll be matan neder." Okay. But, okay, so if
Is working for people.
yeah, you lower synagogue.
Yeah.
I thought we just said that the Hebrew says we work on.
No, you're allowed to do it. No. Not seeing Simon Bracha. It's not an Isser. It's not an Isser. Tisha B'Av also. It's not Isser. That's a separate thing. Yeah. That's a separate issue. That and there are limitations to low Yira Simon Bracha. There are limitations to that. Let's say the person needs it for Parnasa. We don't say that. We're not going to say that.
It's a lot of.
No, it's got to be something that's you don't need it. I don't miss a day of work. Whatever. Okay, that's why I'll just mention one of our chaverim who just was nifted. He would take off on Chol HaMoed because why should I work on Chol HaMoed? It's according to Chazal, you're supposed to have vacation time. Right?
He always took off all the Yom Tov from you did.
Okay.
All
right. I don't want to get too far afield.
Yeah.
Okay. And now we come to the next line. All right. Okay, so he said like this. No, in Tveria, where Rebbe was at that time, there was no such minhag in order to make it forbidden. Okay, that's answer number 2. Okay, now comes answer number 3 of how could Rebbe have planted the boyasema la'olam. No, the truth of the matter is maybe there was an Isser Malach, but the Rebbe Netiya Shel Simcha Nota. Rebbe didn't plant just stam to plant. He planted. It's called a planting of simcha. What's a planting of simcha? Kiditnan, like it says in Mesechta Tainus. Now, in Mesechta Tainus, we learn that there are a series of fasts that were nigzar by the Rabbanim when there was no rain. A series of 3 fasts, right? Then 7, then another 3 fasts, then 7 fasts. Okay. There were different fasts, 3, 7, and 3, I think it was. 3, 7, and 3. Okay. The Gemorah says there, Avru Elu, if the days of Tainus that passed, that they were supposed to fast because there was no rain, V'lo Nanu, and they didn't get answered with rain, Mematin b'masa uv'matan, we reduce buying and selling, Bebinyan uv'netiya, by building and planting, we reduce building and we reduce planting. Be'eresin of inisuin, we reduce engagements and marriages. And those are the things that we reduce when the rain doesn't come and we fasted and still didn't get answered. The Tana Allah, and we learned in the second Tainus about that restriction of not making weddings and so on and so forth. Binyan means you're not supposed to build. We're not supposed to build. Binyan shel simcha, of joy. Netiya means netiya shel simcha, a planting of joy. And the Gemara explains, Ezehu binyan shel simcha. What's considered a binyan shel simcha, right? Ze abona beis chasnas livno. What they reduce, what they wouldn't make on the 9 days or on a fast day, they wouldn't make a base chasana for his son. Ezel Netiya Shel Simcha, Zehanoteya Aboniki Shel Melachim. That's somebody who plants an orchard that kings go walking around in order to feel good about themselves. So those are the things that we reduce, right? And Rebbe wasn't planting one of those things. So therefore, since it wasn't in that category, that was allowed to be done. Okay, let's learn the Rashi on this first. Okay,
It's Rashi, Rabbi.
now we go to the Rashi, where it says, the first line of the narrow lines, Bar Arvisa Hava, you know, he was the 14th. That was the original Hava, meaning the Rebbe was the 14th guy. So he says, Lo Hayisa Mina Mukafin. He wasn't one of the walled city guys. Asked the Gemorah, Utvarya Mekefes Choim Moshe Shubenun Lekamin Yalfina Makra. We're going to learn later on how we know Tverya was a walled city from Yoshua Benun's time. V'chip shitele shahim mei chamisa mi shorei avisma melacha. And where is it so simple that even though Rebbe was from a walled city and was celebrating on the 15th, that all of a sudden on the 14th you're allowed to do work? And it's like, no, lo nitzucha, you don't have to mention it really with Megillah's Tainus. Sharei Kvaksum and Megillah's Esther, Sha'asa Behevah with Tainus. Megillah's Esther itself said it's forbidden to make a hesped and Ella lesser shall zeh. The reason it's mentioned in the Megillah's Tainus is to tell us what was permitted or forbidden on the 14th, it's forbidden on the 15th, the 15th, the 14th, so on. And what happened? Rav saw that he was shadi kislas oreya pishton. He was planting flax, and he told him Bario Mehave Shakaru Bo B'nei Iro. It was a day in which they were reading the Megillah. Afilu Tema Bayo Mehave Rebbe Shenota Netiya Biyom Shakaru Bo. When Rebbe planted on the day in which they read the Megillah, Nota. That's when he planted. Ai Utikab Kashalacha Yom Tov Sha'asa B'Asiyas Malacha. When it says you're not allowed to do it, you're not allowed to do Asiyas Malacha. Ha'u Krad Ksiv Simcha Umishta B'Yom Tov Ksiv Me'ikara Kodem Kabbalah. Before it was accepted, it said Mishta Simcha Mishta B'Yom Tov. Our B'Shas Kabbalah later on in the Megillah, when Klal Yisrael accepted the Yom Tov of Purim, Lo Kiblu Aleim Ala Simcha Mishta. The only thing that we accepted upon ourselves is that we're going to have a simcha on Purim, we're going to have drinking on Purim, right? La'oson behesped the tainus, to forbid those days to make a hesped or to make a fast day. Aval Yom Tov lo kiblu aleim, but on Yom Tov that they never accepted upon themselves. Uba'asei the Rebbe lo nog, b'mkomo shel Rebbe lo nagu isi b'dora. In the place of Rebbe, they didn't have such an issue. Netiya shel simcha. What's Netiya shel simcha? The kiv and the Purim Yom Simcha. You'll ask, why is it you're allowed to plant the Netiya shel simcha on Purim? Reason? Because the kiv and the Purim Yom Simcha. Since Purim is a day of simcha, mutal and tawa Netiya shel simcha. You're allowed to plant Netiya shel simcha. Kedivnan, like we learned in the Mesechta Tainus, Avru elu yud gimel taniyos. Right? So there were 3 and 7 and 3, right? 13. Yud Gimel Taniyas, Bezdin the San al Akshamim, that Bezdin has to fast when there's no rain. Below Nenu min Akshamim, min Hashemayim, Memat and Benatiya Babinyan. We reduce planting and building. Betana, Natiya means when you're planting, it means Natiya Shel Simcha. Binyan, Ha'amar Kan, She'osu, the Binyan Shel Simcha. The thing that was forbidden is a binyan of simcha. Because you're supposed to act like an oval when there's no rain. Unetiya ha'amura kan, and when it says you couldn't plant, netiya shel simcha kagon aborniki. What's an aborniki? Elon shetzilo noah. It's a tree that is very shady. Kagon elon shekofin oso al gabe kunsos. A tree that they used to hang it over, like make a sukkah out of it, right? The Yesedos for Hamalachim Ochlan Takta Bimos Hachama, and the kings would sit in the shade of this willow tree, you know, that hung down, and they would enjoy the thing. Umis Adninba, they'd have tremendous Eden, you know, like the word Gan Eden. b'minei smachos ubinyan beis chasanas livno. That's also a binyan shel simcha. K'shemesi isha livno arishon hoya bona lo bayis. He would build for that son. Vosa lo chuppah b'tocho, and he would make a chuppah in that house. Alma ikan atiyah shel simcha. So from here we learn there is an atiyah shel simcha. Okay, there's a lot to go on. The truth of the matter is, I wanted to go through some of the places a little bit late. I can't go through all of them, but I mentioned outside before that Rebbe lived in Tveria, but also in other places. Tosfos points out that this particular time,
which Tosfos?
the Tosfos where it says Rebbe b'Tveria, it brings out nearest Shahoyah Antoninus. It was during the time of Antoninus. Rashi in Toldos brings down that when it says in the pasuk Shnei Goyim, it says Shnei Goyim with an aleph, exalted ones Elu Antoninus Rebbe Shelo Pasko Me'al Shulchanam Lobi Mosachama V'Lobi Mosakshonim Lo Snon Lo Chazeres. They were so wealthy, both Rebbe and Antoninus. Antoninus was the Roman general, but he was friends with Rebbe. He was machmir Rebbe tremendously. He loved him. They were like brothers, right? That was Yaakov and Esav. That's why Rashi mentions it. And here he turned it around. He gave tremendous cover to Rebbe. Okay, and it says when it says Rebbe b'Tveria, that was during the time of Antoninus. She'rotza l'shachar b'nei Tveria mimas was the general, and he said, "I love the Jews so much. All the Jews in Tveria are going to not have to pay any taxes whatsoever." Right? Because he said, now see if you can figure out this next word. He wanted to make Tveria into a colony, right? Kalanya. He wanted to make Tveria into one of the Roman colonies. Very good. But you have English there?
No.
Okay.
There's no English for
Okay. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Okay. There is, I had a whole discussion I wanted to bring up, but I can raise it next time too. At the beginning of Shiur, Yetz Hashem, I'll raise it. There's a tremendous stira in the Shulchan Aruch. In one place in the Shulchan Aruch, it talks about whether or not you're noeg avelus on Purim.
Oh, right.
And in another place, he says, you're not noeg avelus on Purim.
What do you mean you don't sit Shiva on
You're
Purim?
right.
Oh, there's a question. What does it mean?
Yeah.
What does it mean? And it's a fascinating.
That's right.
There's a fascinating comment. The fascinating comment on the side of the Shulchan Aruch, and one of the examples. Remind me next time we start Yetz Hashem with that very interesting Hakira. The very interesting Hakira. I thought I would start with it today, but
What?
yeah.
On Purim?
No.
Oh, really?
No, you gotta go to Megilah.
Really?
So do they or don't they?
You sit Shiva on Hanukkah?
All right, so there's it's a bit ambiguous.
That's a good question.
You're right. There is a duality. How did it come about? You're right. That's an interesting question.
Because I
The Didi Avoda, yeah. I had the same thing. My grandmother also was lifted right before Purim. Yeah.
What about a Hanukkah?
Same did.
Hanukkah you also said.
Same did. Yeah. All right. You should hear about Simchas. Rabbi Hananya ben Akasha Omer. Rotza HaKadosh Baruch Hu L'Zachas Yisrael. L'Fiko Chibur Yam Torah Mitzvah Shenemar. Adonai Chavetz L'man Tzidkol. Yagdil Torah v'Yadir.
Thank you, Rabbi. Have a good night. Good year. Good year.
Amen.